Hello everybody and welcome to my video on trade creation and trade diversion, part of the IB Economics higher level syllabus, section 3.4 economic integration. So let's start with trade creation. Trade creation is a theory that shows how countries entering agreements to lower or remove tariffs, for example, a free trade area, will experience a gain in welfare. Why does this happen? Because the countries in question are moving from a high-cost domestic producer to a low-cost producer inside the trade union. And this is important for you to know because obviously it shows some benefits of free trade and, more importantly, the benefits of entering a trade agreement for a country in question, which is quite common in an exam. So let's hop into an example and diagram. Here we have the real world example of the UK market for butter before and after entering the EU. So here we have the market before, and we can see that, we have our regular supply and demand and our world supply, and they are importing mainly their butter from Denmark, which happens to be in the EU. Now, this is important for afterwards, and quantity is still greater than quantity normal, so they're still experiencing some of the benefits of imports, but this benefit is exemplified after they join the EU. So obviously after they join the EU, and I'm going to draw this in another color, the tariff gets kind of removed. So because the tariff is being removed from the EU, from all countries in the EU, which includes Denmark, the world price is going to drop. So we can see, oh, yeah, that's going all the way down here. So this is price world, no tariff. And this is the supply world. And again, still from Denmark. It's the exact same from their side. It's just that we've removed tariffs. And this causes a couple of things to happen. So I'm just going to draw Q3 here and Q4. So what's interesting is that we see a total shift in the consumer surplus, producer surplus, and government revenue. So I've written these down here, and that's going to show us why we're experiencing a welfare loss, or a welfare gain, I should say, sorry. So, before this whole area was our consumer surplus, which was pretty nice, better than with no international trade at all. And our producer surplus, I'll draw it in purple, was this little area. But we see that upon entering, and this area right here was really gained by nobody. Nobody was really using it. Actually, this was government revenue, right? They were profiting off the tariff, and this was the area they were profiting. However, we see that after we enter the EU, after the UK entered the EU, since the tariff went down, well, the consumer surplus expanded massively. So in fact, and I'm going to draw it in blue, so this is blue, this whole area here, I hope you can see the colors properly, even though they're super late, becomes part of the consumer surplus. Producer surplus has dropped by this whole area here, which I'm just going to letter at this point. So I'm going to call this area alpha. And government revenue, as we were saying, has been lost by the area, and we're going to call it, let's say, delta, right? That's the loss in government revenue. What we see is that these two brand new areas we're going to call A and B are complete welfare gains. Nobody was using them. So A and B equals gain in welfare. So although producer surplus is falling, the absolute gain in consumer surplus more than makes up for it, as does the cheaper prices. Consumption is going up from Q2 to Q4. And we have a gain in welfare in A and B, as I said. And this leads, so this is obviously a benefit of entering a trade agreement, but there are also some cons. And this is best shown with trade diversion. So this is the other end of the scale, a theory that shows how, countries entering a customs union or a common market or monetary union, i.e., an area where free trade is within there's free trade within unions, but also a common external tariff, will experience a loss in welfare. So why does this happen? That's because the countries in question are moving from a low-cost foreign producer to a high-cost producer, right? Before, you might have been importing from a country, but then you enter your common union or whatever, and you're forced to put a higher tariff on them. And so this is obviously important because it can show the negatives of joining a customs union. And so once again, we're going to go in with another example, real world example. So this is the UK market for lamb before and after entering the EU. So we see a very similar situation as with butter before. It's a regular international economic supply and demand curve, and they're importing most of their lamb from New Zealand, and New Zealand is not part of the EU. So when the UK joins the EU, well, they're forced to put a much bigger tariff on New Zealand, which causes the world price to go up since, they're importing them. And so we see here, let's call this Q3, let's call this Q4. And this is going to cause a loss in welfare. So once again, we're going to represent what's happening here. Consumer surplus has dropped by this whole area here, right? Producer surplus has gone up. So it's orange by this area here. And government revenue has also gone up by this area here. However, even with these changes, the fact remains, I forgot to label this right here. So price world plus tariff. The fact remains that not only are consumers consuming less, so it went from Q2 to Q4, and Q4 is smaller than Q2. We also have these areas, we'll call again A and B, which are complete welfare loss. They're just being lost and thrown away, which means a deadweight loss of society. So A plus B equals our welfare loss. So this shows that for countries entering a customs union, they can very well experience a loss in welfare because of this, because they are forced to impose taxes on other countries, which could explain things like why the UK might want to leave the European Union to avoid this kind of welfare loss or these negatives. I hope everything went well in the video, and if you have any questions, please comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you very much.